you very much for coming today. And today we'll be having two presentations. One is from Brother Dennis, which is about Nigredo and the Chamber of Reflection in the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite. And you have another presentation after that, which will be from Brother Mo about the keys of discipleship. And before we start, I would just like to make a short, very short introduction. So, brethren, this afternoon on the precise balance of the spring equinox, we gathered not merely to listen, but to reflect. We descended into Nigredo and the Chamber of Reflection. We were mere reminded that before light, there is darkness. Before elevation, there is dissolution. The chamber strips away illusions. It confronts the candidate with morality, silence, and the uncompromising mirror of the self. Transformation begins there, not in comfort, but in confrontation. We then turned to the keys for deciphering esoteric knowledge. We were challenged to look beyond ornament and structure, beyond symbols and into meaning. Esoteric wisdom does not yield to curiosity alone. It demands discipline, humility, and intellectual rigor. The temple reveals itself only to the prepared mind. As chairman of the Careggiana Masonic Study Group, I see today's reflection as perfectly aligned with the equinox itself. Balance between shadow and illumination, study and contemplation, descent and ascent. May what we examine this afternoon not remain theory. May it refine our inner architecture. May the light we seek be earned through that, not merely desired in words. Brethren, the balance is before us, the work continues, so mote it be. So now I present to the...
You have the floor. Thank you, John. Okay. To the glory of the great architect of the universe, esteemed brethren of the Careggiana Research Group, and dear brethren all, it is a true honor to present this piece of architecture before the Careggiana Research Group, and especially on such a significant day at the spring equinox. The work I wish to share is a reflection on the symbol V.I.T.R.I.O.L, 7 letters that contain an entire path of inner Masonic work. Today I will structure this work in 5 parts. First, as a necessary recognition before any descent, we will look at the eye that descends, the Aslan, and the inner architect within. Then I will deconstruct the motto itself in 3 movements: Visita interior atterrare, the descent to the inner earth, rectificando, the work of rectification, and invenience occultum labrum, the discovery of the hidden stones. And finally, I will offer an esoteric reading of the Lodge as the inner temple of work, showing its relation to V.I.T.R.I.O.L, the solar cycle, and the special significance of today's spring equinox under which we gather today. Let us begin where we first encountered this word as apprentices. We first encountered this motto in a very special place, the Chamber of Reflection, at the threshold of initiation. There, surrounded by the symbols of mortality and the passing of time, we see this enigmatic motto written as a series of initials, V.I.T.R.I.O.L. The 7 letters from a Latin acrostic. The full phrase is Visita interior atterrare, rectificando invenience occultum labrum. Visit the interior of the earth, and by rectifying, you will find the hidden stone. As far as we know, this sentence appears from around the late Middle Ages, in the text attributed to the alchemist Valletta, one of the notable figures of the alchemical and esoteric tradition in Europe. So V.I.T.R.I.O.L is not just a decorative or meaningless acronym. In the Chamber of Reflection, it carries a long history as a compact hermetic alchemical formula for inner transformation, a kind of roadmap for the Masons on descent and rebuilding. But before we descend anywhere, we first have to ask a simple question. Who is that descends? Before we speak of any descent to the interior of the earth, there is a fundamental previous step, to recognize that what we usually call I is not what we think it is. It is to a great extent a mere illusion. If one were to ask any person, who are you? The answer would most often be a name, a story, a profession. We tend to point out to our personal history and our role in the world. Behind that, there is a whole bunch of beliefs, habits, prejudices, desires, and opinions that we have absorbed over the years. Almost all of this has come in through the five senses, and it is constantly being reinforced by the world around us. This is the I we normally live from, an egoic construct operating mostly unconsciously, and very often it lives in a state of compulsive reactivity, reacting to events, emotions, and other people almost like a program running on automatic pilot. There are names and symbols for this conditioned illusory self in different traditions. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it is related to Maya, the power of illusion that makes the changing, limited personality seem like a solid and separate self. In Jewish Kabbalah, it is pictured as the Klipot, the shell that surround and conceal the inner spark. In Jungian psychology, it appears as the persona, the social mask or role which we identify. In Christianity, we hear of the old man, the self ruled by passions and ingrained habits, and in Freemasonry, we represent this conditioned self as the rough ashlar, our unworked and refined character. This rough ashlar, this whole bundle of conditioning, is what most of us unconsciously take ourselves to be. But the work of V.I.T.R.I.O.L begins when we stop confusing ourselves with the stone. So in Masonry, we are often told that we are the rough stone. If we take this literally, it can create a misunderstanding. There is a paradox here. In one sense, it is true. The rough stone is the way our ego or character appears in the world, the form in which our inner life is projected and manifested in matter. But in a deeper sense, we are not only the stone. The real problem is when we identify completely with it, when we believe that the ego and its story is the whole who we are. V.I.T.R.I.O.L begins with a very important shift. I am not just a stone. If there is a stone, there must be also a builder. The rough ashlar is my conditioned self, but there is something in me that can recognize it, watch it, and work on it. This is what we can call the inner architect, or simply awareness. In the image, the architect stands in the middle of the temple. He receives the light from the all-seeing from the great architect of the universe. He stands between the I and the rough ashlar, between the source of light and the manifested self. It is not a coincidence that the rough ashlar is on the left lunar side of the lodge. I am talking this from the Scottish Rite, because we usually have the rough ashlar on the left side of the lodge, and we have here the moon. And on the right side, we have the perfected ashlar. So the perfect ashlar is on the right side, on the solar side, the more active masculine pole. He observes the stone instead of being the stone, and because he can observe it, he can choose if, how, and where to strike. This is the inner architect. This inner architect is the part of us that can pause, step back from reactions and patterns, and begin to shape our life consciously. So, what this recognition allows? First, we can begin to observe the patterns that seem to run our life, instead of being totally identified with them. We can start to make the unconscious conscious in the sense of Carl Jung. And little by little, we learn to see through the veil of illusion and to look for the truth within our experiences and the way we project ourselves and relate to the world. In this light, the stone, our ego and personality, is not an enemy. It is the instrument through which we act in the material world. The danger is not the stone itself, but forgetting that we are the architect who shapes it. This awakening of the inner architect, this recognition that I'm not the stone, but the one who works upon it, is the first real step of awakening and initiation. Only from this place we can truly respond to the call, Visita Interior a Terra, and begin our descent into the inner earth with clarity and purpose. So, when the motto invites us to visit the interior of the earth, it's not speaking about a physical cave or mine. It is inviting us to descend into the inner earth of our being. We can understand this interior in several ways. First, it is the deepest layers of our being, where the roughness and imperfections of our rough ashlar are hidden. It is the realm of the subconscious and unconscious, where our hidden patterns live and act. It is also the part of us that can block spiritual growth and conceal our true self. In alchemy, this descent into the inner darkness marks the beginning of the Nigredo, the black phase of the world, the necessary stage where what is impure is brought into light so it can be transformed. So this interior of the earth is the inner text, where our wounds, fears, and automatic reactions are stored, but also where our possibility of transformation begins. This invitation is not unique to V.I.T.R.I.O.L. We find the same call in many traditions, expressed in different words. At Delphi, the temple of Apollo, carried the inscription, "Know thyself." In Christianity, Jesus speaks of entering the inner room in Matthew 6:6, as the verse on the slide says, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen." His descent into the heart of the earth can also be read as a symbol of inner journey. In Freemasonry, we have the chamber of reflection, a symbolic earth where we begin our journey in silence and solitude. So the chamber of reflection in the Scottish Rite is where the initiate is the first, let's say, stage where he enters. Okay. In all other cases, the silence of this inner room serves to quiet the noise of the ego so that we can begin to listen to the inner master, the true self. So when V.I.T.R.I.O.L says, "Visit the interior of the right," it is calling each of us to do the same work, to enter our inner room, to know ourselves beyond the mask, and to allow the inner architect to begin the work on the stone. Here we look a bit closer at that inner earth, what lives in it, and how we can visit it consciously. First, what lives there? It is a storehouse of unconscious material, beliefs we absorb without really questioning them, all fears, wounds, prejudices, desires. It holds our repetitive thoughts and emotional reactions, the same inner story and moods that keep returning. All these patterns tend to act automatically, and very often they quietly rule our life. In Masonic language, we could say these were the imperfections of the rough ashlar live in our psyche. So how do we enter this inner earth? We visit it by observing our thoughts, emotions, and bodily reactions as they arise. The key tool of the apprentice is silence, outer and inner silence, creating a space in which we can finally hear what is usually drowned by the noise of daily life. True observation means staying present in this silence without judging, with humility, self-awareness, and compassion towards ourselves. The aim is to recognize, accept, and gradually integrate what Jung called the shadow and the inner masculine-feminine polarity, the anima and anima. This is the beginning of the real inner work, not fighting our inner earth, but bringing light into it through silence and observation. As Psalms 46 says, "Be still and know that I am God." In that stillness, the inner architect begins to see what in the stone needs to be worked. So, this inner earth is made of unconscious material, shadow, and old patterns, and we enter it through silence and observation. The question now is, how do we observe? In daily life, where does this work actually happen? On this slide, I've put three main fields of observation where the inner architect can really visit the stone. We have first the inner observation. This is the field of our thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations. Just sitting quietly and noticing what passes through the mind and the body. Here the breath becomes a bridge. In Hebrew, the word neshama means soul, and neshima means breath. They share the same root. This reminds us that by observing our breath consciously, we are not only anchored in the present moment, but we can also begin to listen to what our soul is whispering in the silence. Inner observation means cultivating inner silence, watching the mind without identifying with every thought, without trying to fix or control everything. simply seeing clearly what it is. The second field is outer observation. This is the realm of our actions, words, and habitual choices. How we actually behave in the lodge, at work, in the family. Here we pay special attention to our projections, how we react to other people, situations, and symbols, and in deeper sense, what kind of world we are creating through those reactions. Very often, what irritates or fascinates us outside is pointing to something unresolved inside. Hermeticism reminds us that the universe is mental, that reality functions as a kind of mirror. Outer observation is learning to read the mirror instead of blaming it. And the third field is the dream observation. This is the field of the night. We are taught through the symbol of the 24-inch gauge to use our time consciously, dividing the day into three parts. One of the third is set aside for rest. But as Masons, we can ask ourselves, is the third of our life meant to be only for falling into an unconscious sleep, or it can also become a field of inner work. Dreams reveal our subconscious patterns in a symbolic way. For Jung and traditions such as the dream yoga, dreams are a privileged path to inner earth and awakening. So we should ask, how is that human beings can grow and approach enlightenment? Is it just sleeping, or is there something more? It means that we can learn to be more conscious of our dreams, to remember them, write them down, reflect on their symbols, and with practice, even become lucid in them. That is, to be conscious and awake in the dream state, and begin to work on ourselves there as well, opening a space to learn, transform, and connect more deeply with the divine. So these three doors through which we can visit our inner earth every day, through inner observation of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, through outer observation of our actions and projections, and through dream observation in the night. In all three, the principle is the same. The architect observes the stone without being the stone. In this movement of Visita Interior V.I.T.R.I.O.L, we are not trying to carve or correct. We are learning to visit, to look, and to remain in silence. This attentive silence prepares the ground for the next movement of the motto, rectificando, the actual work of rectification. Okay, what does rectify mean? Rectify comes from Latin rectus, meaning straight, right, and facere, to make. So to rectify means literally to make straight, to set right. In that sense, to rectify is to restore something to its right line, to its true measure. In Masonry, this is exactly what happens with the rough ashlar. It is patiently brought back to its proper proportion, aligned with the rule so it can fit in the temple. Every conscious blow of the chisel, esoterically our intention, and every measured stroke of the mallet, esoterically our attention and will, shapes the stone a little closer to its true form. Rectification is the ongoing work of bringing what is out of truth back into line, bringing the rough ashlar back edge by edge and angle by angle to its right measure. We can see the same idea in different symbolic languages. In Christianity, the biblical Greek word harmatia, usually translated as sin, literally means missing the mark, like an arrow that does not reach its target. In Jewish Kabbalah, the work of return is called tikkun, rectification, the repair of soul and world. In the Scottish Rite ritual, we are asked, what have you come here to do in Masonry? The answer is, to conquer my passions, submit my will, and make new progress in Freemasonry. And all of this points out to the same movement, to bring our life and our will back into alignment with our true mark, with the standard for which we were created. The mark is the one to whom we submit that will. The inner I am that I am, in Hebrew, Eye Asher Eye, the name by which God revealed himself to Moses. In us, it points us to our higher self, the inner image of our perfected being, the living stone we are called to become. So rectificando means realigning ourselves with this true measure, with this inner image of who we are who we are truly meant to be. From a life that has been missing that mark, we gradually return to alignment, blow by blow, choice by choice. Sorry, I need to bring up. So Hermetic language goes one step further and tells us that this setting right is also transmutation, a change of vibration. At the top you see this summary in Hermetic terms. To rectify is to transmute low frequency patterns, fear, hatred, falsehood, vice, into higher ones. Love, courage, truth, compassion, in harmony with the principle of vibrational polarity. On this slide, I've divided the work into above and below, the macro and the micro, contemplation and chiseling. Above on the macro side, we work with archetypes and virtues. This is the field of high frequency archetypes. The Christic man, the knight of the temple, the just or righteous one. We contemplate the virtues, faith, courage, patience, compassion, charity, justice, humility. By contemplation, which is not the same as emptying the mind, but rather resting our attention steadily on a symbol idea, allowing it to imprint itself on us. These archetypes slowly begin to shape our thoughts, emotions, and actions. In Masonic language, this is like holding the ideal form of the perfect hustler we are called to become. So above means keeping alive the image of what is highest in us, the measure to which we want to align the stone. Below, on the micro side, we work with concrete patterns. This is the field of fears, resentment, envies, lies, vices, addiction, and harmful habits. Everything we actually see in our inner ear. Here the law of polarity helps us. Every pattern has a lower and higher expression. For example, fear has courage as its higher pole, pride has humility. By the low vibration, we gradually raise the pattern along the scale, from reaction to response, from compulsion to conscious choice. Practically, it starts when we notice a pattern in our inner ear, then rectificando, we choose its higher expression. Each such choice is like squaring one edge of the rough asphalt with chisel and mud. So rectification unfolds both above and below at the same time. Above, we hold the image of the perfect stone. Below, we work on one angle, one habit, bringing each pattern step by step to high vibration. This is how V.I.T.R.I.O.L becomes daily work, not just an inscription we read, but a living process of transmutation, carried out by the inner architect on the stone of our own being. So V.I.T.R.I.O.L leads us through three movements. We visit the inner air, we rectify and transmute our patterns, and finally, the motto gives a promise. In Venice occultum late, you will find the hidden stone. What is this stone? First of all, the hidden stone is not a physical object. It is a state of consciousness, a way of being. Many traditions point to the same inner reality, but with different names. The philosopher's stone of the alchemists, the perfect cubic stone of Masonry, our divine essence or true self, Christ consciousness, the Buddhic or awakened state, the restored Adamic state before the fall. All these point out to one archetype, the human being in whom the human and the divine are reconciled, fully human and at the same time a clear channel for the light. The image on the right expresses this through the heart. Here the heart is not only a feeling center, but a kind of inner chalice, the awakened intuitive center of our being. We could say it stands at the inner center of our temple. When this heart is awakened, we begin to live and act from this inner center. From this center of the heart flow through wisdom, love, and power, not to dominate, but to serve and to build. This is the heart from which the Mason is meant to act, and as the work on the stone advances. So to find the hidden stone is to acquire something outside. Is not to acquire something outside of ourselves. Is to awaken this true self within, beyond the mask, beyond the rough asphalt, beyond the old stories of who we think we are. In this third movement, V.I.T.R.I.O.L comes to its fulfillment. As the inner architect works patiently on the stone, the inner light of the heart can shine more and more freely through our thoughts, our words, and our actions. From here, the work does not end, but everything we do becomes a part of the same work. The revelation of this hidden stone in the temple of our own life and in the wider temple of humanity. So if the hidden stone is this awakened state of consciousness, what is the aim of the whole work? What is V.I.T.R.I.O.L really leading us back to? Scripture tells us the human being was created in the image and likeness of God. Genesis 1:26-27. In the language that we've been using tonight, this image and likeness is the hidden stone in us, a divine image partially buried under layers of fear, habit, and illusion. To find the hidden stone is therefore to awaken and reconnect with this divine essence, our true self, beyond the mask and beyond the rough asphalt. On this path, three great questions slowly begin to receive an answer. Who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? V.I.T.R.I.O.L is simply a name for this inner process. As we visit our inner earth and rectify what we find there, we are transformed from unconscious and imperfect beings into persons more and more aligned with this divine image. This transformation unfolds as we gently turn our attention towards spirit, towards the great architect of the universe, instead of clinging to the perishable illusions of matter and ego alone. Step by step, like a rough asphalt patiently work, we are shaped again into the image and likeness, living stones more and more able to take our place in the temple of humanity. If this is the aim of the work, the recovery of the divine image and the revelation of the hidden stone, the next question is, where is this process symbolically reflected before our eyes? I would suggest that it's reflected in the lodge itself. So the lodge is the place of the Masonic world, but it's also far more than a physical setting. It is revealed architecture of order, proportion, and measure. Nothing in it is random, because its design reflects the structure of reality itself and the perfect architecture of the cosmos, under the great architect of the universe. And by the Hermetic axiom, as above so below, this same lodge may also be contemplated as an image of man. The outer temple mirrors the inner temple. Thus, when we observe the lodge, we are not only looking at a ritual space, but a symbolic revelation of cosmos, consciousness, and the architecture of the human being. If the lodge may be contemplated as an image of man, then one further consequence follows. If man is created in the divine image, then within him there is likewise a schema, a plan by which if man is created in the divine image, then within him there is likewise a schema, a plan by which he may be reordered, aligned, and built. In other words, the human being is not merely broken matter waiting to be repaired at random. He contains within himself a higher pattern, a latent order according to which the world may proceed. Its structure, vertical and horizontal, reflects levels and aspects of consciousness. And here one may draw a useful parallel with the Kabbalistic tradition, in which each sephira is understood as an attribute or manifestation of the divine. In a similar way, the elements of the lodge, and even the offices and roles of the brethren within it, may be read as expression of an inner sacred order. Thus the lodge may also be understood as an inner architecture of the soul. With this inner temple are centers of consciousness, energy, and transmutation. Some traditions describe such centers, like the sevenfold chakra system used here as visual reference. So I use the sevenfold because it matches well, but for example, the alchemical tradition, they have a threefold level, the heart, earth, and abdomen, or depends on which tradition. Within this inner temple, 3 pillars may be contemplated: a central axis of alignment, the middle pillar, and 2 complementary currents, lunar and solar. I don't know if the emulation they have sun and moon. Sure. Okay.
No, but we have the 2 parallel lines, so it's described as the north and south. The point is in a circle, and the circle is bounded by 2 parallel lines, one describing
yes,
yes, so it has the same, actually I thought about confrontation, so this
in the Lodge, this same polarity is reflected through the 2 columns, Boas and Yaki, Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon are another separate symbolism, but another way of reading the same dual structure. The same may be said of other pale expressions: feminine and masculine, passive and active, contraction and expansion, matter and spirit, severity and mercy. These symbolic languages point to the same fundamental truth: manifested light unfolds through polarity. One of these currents gathers, receives, contracts, and interiorizes. The other radiates, expands, expresses, and manifests. These tensions are not enemies. One cannot exist without the other. They are complementary forces. And as the law rhythm teaches, we are constantly drawn from one pole towards the other. Human life is always moving between these extremes. The work, therefore, is not to destroy polarity, but to rectify it, to bring these forces into balance, and to remain aligned in the middle pillar. The middle pillar is the path of inner order, the axis to which the Mason may stand centered rather than dispersed between extremes. Here, the temple is no longer contemplated only as structure, but as a living order in motion. All life unfolds through rhythm, cycle, and return. Nothing truly living remains fixed in a static condition. Everything moves according to law, recurrence, and proportion. In Freemasonry, this order is expressed through the ritual circumambulation around the center. It is an ordered circulation in relation to the axis. We move not aimlessly, but in conscious relation to the center, and therefore in conscious relation to order itself. Symbolically, this movement may be contemplated as a passage from spirit into manifestation, and from manifestation towards restored balance. It expresses the truth that the work is not accomplished in a straight line alone, but through living cycles of return, correction, and realignment. And in broader sense, it mirrors the rhythms of nature itself. Just as the earth moves around the sun, source of light, warmth, and life, so the Mason moves around the center of the temple. The outer movement becomes the visible form of an inner process, a circulation around the source, a discipline of relation to the center, and a preparation for conscious return to the center. Because we gather today at the spring equinox, it is fitting to read this movement also through the solar cycle. So, well, we have here the solstice, spring equinox, on the right is the because we gather today at the spring equinox, it is fitting to read this movement also through the solar cycle. Masonic symbolism is deeply solar, and the rhythm of solstice and equinox offers a powerful key for understanding the world. The solstices marks the 2 extremes, the point where darkness reaches its greatest predominance on the north, and the point where the light reaches its greatest predominance in the south. The equinoxes, by contrast, are the moments of equilibrium when day and night are held in measure and balance. In initiatic terms, the winter turning can be contemplated as the hidden point in which the darkness seems to prevail, yet the light is already preparing its return, the mystery of the ascending victus. The summer turning, by contrast, is the point of fullest radiance and manifestation. Between these 2 extremes stand the equinoxes, not as an absence of movement, but as a balance within movement itself. And just as the earth moves through its cycle around the sun, source of light and life, so the Mason passes through the recurring stages through recurring stages of inner work. The center remains the heart of the temple, the inner sun around which the whole world is ordered. In this way, the temple reflects a fourfold rhythm of the work itself. If we borrow the agrarian language of ancient mysteries, and especially the Eleusinian mysteries, this rhythm may be named very simply: seed, germination, fullness, and harvest. The seed is hidden below the earth. Life begins to stir and emerge. It comes into fullness, and finally it is gathered. Thus, the outer cycle of nature becomes an image of the inner cycle of initiation. Here, the same solar cycle now receives its inner alchemical reading. What the solar year reveals outwardly, the world reveals inwardly. Winter in the north corresponds to visita interior terral, the descent into the inner earth. This is the phase of shadow, of hidden layers, of the rough ashlar not yet examined or purified. It is necessary to descend beneath appearances, into what is still unconscious, reactive, and unworked. Spring in the east is renewal and reorientation, because it is the equinoxial point. It signifies balance, the return of life, the restoration of measure, and the awakening of the world toward life again. Since we meet today under the sign of the spring equinox, this stage is especially meaningful. It is not yet completion, but the turning of the cycle towards conscious renewal. Summer in the south corresponds to rectificando. Here the world becomes active and operative. This is the labor of rectification, transmutation, correction, and the patient effort to restore the stone to its right line and true measure. In Masonic language, it is the discipline by which the rough ashlar is gradually made fit for the temple. Autumn in the west corresponds to invenience. This is the phase of harvest, discernment, and discovery. What has been cultivated through the work is now gathered, tested, and consciously recognized. It is the moment when the fruits of the labor can be judged, and the center stands as a cultum lapidum, the hidden stone, not as a physical object, but a state of consciousness, the divine image shining in the heart, the true self awakened within. So the cycle is no longer seasonal, it becomes initiatic. Descent, renewal, rectification, discernment, and the revelation of the center. So maybe this, even though the work appears cyclical, its true form is not a closed circle, but a spiral of return. This is why the image of the spiral stair is so fitting the Masonic world. One appears to turn again and again, yet each return is not the same return. Each turn may carry the Mason inward and upward at once. What seems repetition from the outside becomes deepening from within. The center, however, does not move. It remains still. It is the hidden stone, the point of equilibrium. The Mason does not merely move around the temple. He learns to return to the center. Thus the great work is revealed as a sacred geometry of return. From circumference to center, from dispersion to alignment, from the rough ashlar to the living stone. And to finish, let us bring the whole motto together in one simple movement. To visit the interior of the earth is to descend beneath the surface, beneath habit, beneath illusion, until we discern the rough ashlar within ourselves. To rectify is to labor upon that stone, to restore to its right line and true measure, until what is unfinished is brought again into order. And when that labor is faithfully undertaken, the hidden stone is revealed, the divine image awakened in the heart. From rough ashlar to true form, the Mason is called to live From rough ashlar to true form, the Mason is called to live more each day in service to the temple of humanity, to the glory of the great architect of the universe. And this is the great work of the Mason.
Brother, would you like to open the floor for some questions? If anybody has some questions.
I was interested in the use of repetition.
Sorry?
You mentioned earlier, I think a few slides back, about repetition.
Is it?
To like external repetition affects you within, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Was it like?
Yeah, it was like 5 minutes back, so I'm sorry.
If you come.
It was a very small point that you made. It got my attention. It was about how internally exercise there's repetition, or you do certain exercise and then it affects you within.
Well, I would say sometimes like if you look at the spiral staircase, sometimes depending on where, if you look at an image, you don't know if you're going up or down. You know, it's a bit confusing. So that's why we always need to align and try to go up. But sometimes it looks like a repetition, but there's a movement also.
First of all, thank you very much for a very illuminating discourse. And I also like very much the idea of macro-micro, which is represented very much also on that slide, which you just showed.
Yes?
When we start from the outside, the center is the pivot, and then we come to arrange the inside. I think perhaps you agree or not, our brothers here. One would have to start from the fact, the macro, looking outside. We are all, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau says, the result, man is the result of his society. So we have been influenced since we were babies.
Yes.
Parents, school, colleagues, friends. And we have, I think, to start from the outside, examine those influences, and when the ones that are good, we keep. The ones that might not have such a positive influence, we have to correct. And then, obviously, like that, there's the rough ashlar there, and we come to the refined ashlar in the other. But we, as individuals, are the center. So we go round and round ourselves and always going in, closing in onto ourselves. It is a challenge, I think. It is also a bigger challenge to admit that we might be wrong, to forget our pride, because as a human being, there is a certain amount of pride, I believe. But we have to forget about that, accept what needs to be corrected, and then towards the improvement. I think it is very much in line with the way I see it. That's what I'm trying to explain. The way I see it. So it's all relative. It's all relative. So thank you so much.
So if you don't have any more questions, before we move to the next presenter, I would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Brother Dennis. This certificate of appreciation is hereby presented to Brother Dennis in grateful recognition of his invaluable contribution as presenter at the Spring Equinox event hosted by Careggiana Masonic Study Group. Through his dedication, wisdom, and commitment to Masonic education, our brother has helped spread the light of truth, knowledge, and understanding in a world too often shrouded in darkness. His labors have enriched the minds of the brethren, strengthened our fraternal bonds, and upheld the noble ideas of Freemasonry. So thank you very much for that. And we also have, we would like to present you Careggiana's badge of merit. It's a very, how do I say, you cannot get this from Timo. So it's only given to those who have presented something in Careggiana, or if you took an office. So We are very proud to give you one of the devote permit.
Should we take a picture?
Okay.
Commemorate this. Next one, give me a sec. And that's it.
Thank you. So our next presenter, Guillermo, you're ready? Or would you like to have a tea break? Short.
Let's have a quick break.
Toilet
You
break.
guys prefer that? Okay, let's do
Yeah.
5-10 minutes.
How long do you think it's
Oh, I'm sorry. We won't go
Very
break,
quick, then
but
we-
I'd rather
I think,
Huh? Would you prefer a break?
Could see something might be to
Yeah, bathroom or anything. So let's do 5 to 10 minutes. No, let's decide now.
Should we do 7 minutes?
I love that. I love that. Which would be exactly perfect, which means we come back at 2:05. 2:05.
God bless you all.
Greetings, brethren, and thank you so much for being here and for allowing me to share part of my experience and part of my journey. The subject of keys. For me, it was, before I start the lecture, if you don't mind, I introduce why keys. It was my first issue. I grew up in an area where I was exposed to esoteric mysteries and so on. And we started off with a book called Shams al-Ma'arif, which means the son of all knowledge. And the second book was only these 2 books for maybe 10 years. It was called V.I.T.R.I.O.L, which in English is well known as the Becatrix. And the biggest problem we ever had was that we were told, we were young, probably 18 to 29 at that area, is that, oh, you can't do it. You can't understand it. This book is absolutely useless without keys. And for the rest of my life, I was duped, misled sometimes, because of that word. And it was very, very important for me to try and understand what is a key. So in order then when I'm presented with one, which honestly Masonry has, I can recognize it and accept it. Because throughout life, that word was a problem for me, and due to my experiences, it would scare me off. Oh, I have the key. Who are you to have the key? So, if you don't mind, I will explain to you a little bit more about what it's a point of view. I'll try to, as much as I can, to support it with actual facts. But at the end of the day, it's my personal point of view. So, we'll start, if you don't mind, I can't read. And I apologize for the lights, so my neurodivergency won't allow me to have a light in my eyes. Okay, so we'll start with definitions. The title is the Universal Grammar of Keys, meaning grammar as structure, rules, and patterns. Global as universal, across all traditions, and universal across all traditions, and keys as the symbol that we together examine. So let us begin with the question that's brought us here. What is it? Well, it's not what it looks like. Then what is it then? For 5,000 years, from the Egyptian Ankh in 3000 BCE to the modern Masonic keys we use today, every culture, every continent used the same symbol. And why? Not a cultural diffusion, not an accidental convergence, but a universal recognition, like the point within the circle, for instance, like the square, like the triangle. These are not inventions, they're recognitions. They're not things. A key is like a lever. A key is similar to a fulcrum. A key is a force, a multiplier. Small input, such as your hand motion, becomes a large output, like maybe access granted. The key does not create force, it directs force. Like your mind and thoughts do not create reality, they direct it. Like words, for instance, words do not create truth, they direct attention to it. This is not a metaphor, it's actual mechanics. A key operates at thresholds. Thresholds come from the Latin word limen, meaning liminal space, between inside and outside, between concealed and revealed, between bound and loose. The key does not belong to either side. It belongs to the threshold, similar to an initiate. The entered apprentice stands between profane and sacred. The fellowcraft between ignorance and light. The master mason between humanity and the divine. The initiate is not inside. He's not outside. The initiate is at the threshold. So, we'll go to 4 universal functions of any key. Every tradition, every culture agreed on the same 4. 1. To conceal and reveal. Locks hide, keys show. 2. To protect and permit. Boundaries with access. 3. To bind and loose. The authority to constrain or free. And 4, very importantly, to animate. The Egyptian wisdom that the key does not open, it animates. For example, in the Jewish tradition, there are 4 levels of interpretation called pardes, and the E's are silent. They were used only for pronunciation. There's actually 4 letters, P, R, D, E, P, R, D, and S. Christian mysticism has 4 levels of meaning. Islamic Sufism has 4 levels of being. Egyptian tradition has 4 operations. Masonry has 3 degrees, plus the transformation. Not by accident, by recognition of universal truth. We now enter what I would call Gateway 1 to our understanding of the concept. Not to show different cultures, to show the same truth through different forms. Like white light through a prism. Same light, different colors. One truth, many expressions, and we'll begin with the Jewish, the Kabbalah. Kabbalah is, as we all know, Jewish mysticism. The Zohar was published in 13th century Spain. According to Moses de Leon, the 4 keys of interpretation called pardes are as follows. The first, Peshat, is literal. The key here is metal, wood, or whatever we use. Rames, allegorical. The key is here authority. Daresh is interpretive. Therefore, the key is knowledge. Sod is hidden. So the key must be being. Now, another example of a key, gematria, the numerical key. And anyone who's familiar with the Jewish Kabbalah would be quite profound with this. Ahad in Hebrew is spelled Aleph, Het, Dalet. Aleph is 1, Het is 8, Dalet is 4. The total, 13. Ahava, meaning love, is spelled Aleph, Het, Bet, He. Aleph 1, Het 5, Bet 2, He is 5. The total is also 13. And here we find that they have the same numerical value. Meaning mystically connected, where unity will equal love. Another tradition, the Christian tradition. Let's start with Revelation, chapter 1, verse 18, from around 95 CE. I hold the keys of death and Hades, not the physical keys. That's authority. From the Gospel of Thomas, from the 2nd century, a Gnostic gospel, where hidden sayings require a key to interpret. Not everyone can read this, only those with the key. Meister Eckhart, a German mystic from 1260 to 1328, spoke of inner birth as the key to divine union. Not external ritual, but internal transformation. Luke chapter 17, verse 21. The kingdom of God is within you, not outside, within. 4 levels that match Kabbalah, match Sufism, and if we were to say, match Masonry. Now, for the Egyptian wisdom tradition, another example. For 3,000 years to present, the Ankh is the key of life. Not key to a door, but a key to literal life. The opening of the mouth ceremony, for instance, was performed on the dead, performed on statues, and performed on stone. The Ankh, having touched the lips, restored speech, breath, and existence. The key does not open here, the key animates. It's not a metaphor, not a symbol, but an operation. The key is vocal, the key is breath, and the key is word. The Egyptian term hu, which funny enough in Sufism is also used, meaning the creative word, can be compared to the Masonic word, lost, recovered, spoken, and with that achieved, life is restored. Now, a topic very dear to my heart, because I'm an initiate. Sufism is more or less Islamic mysticism, quite similar to the Kabbalah and Christian mysticism. Al-Muftah, which means the key, and also has 4 levels. We'll start with the first. It's physical, a key to the physical space, maybe like a mosque, a home, a treasury. 2, it's intellectual. Knowledge unlocks understanding through study, reflection, and most importantly, insight. The third, it's spiritual, zikr, which unlocks the heart. Zikr means remembrance of God, not prayer. Remembrance, and very important, vibration, sound, and timing. And in that tradition, we use things similar to the rosaries in the Christian tradition. The only difference is in the Sufi rosary, we go up to over 10,000. This can count over 10,000. It's got parts for that. And these are done daily. Like our brother Richard said at the very beginning, through discipline. There's no other way. 4, being. Not what you have, what you are. Being unlocks existence. The heart is the lock. Zikr, which means remembrance, is the key. Vibration is the turning, not the metaphor. Operation, like our Masonic obligations. Not words, but vibrations. Not ritual, but transformation. And if you'd like to read, Ibn al-Arabi wrote extensively on this topic in the 13th century. So, let's review what we've talked about. There are 5 traditions and 1 pattern. Jewish has 4 keys of interpretation. The Christian has 4 levels of meaning. Islam has 4 levels of being, and all of this is related to keys. The Egyptian, the key animates, it does not open the door. Sufism, it's external to internal to transformation. The same structure, the same pattern, the same truth. Not a cultural accident, potentially a universal truth. Like white light flowing through a prism, same light, yet diffuses as different colors. We now enter gateway 2. How do keys actually work?
Not what keys are. How do they work? How do they operate? We begin with the lock. Conceal and reveal. And I'm so sure that these words mean a lot to many of us. A lock conceals. A key reveals. It's not destruction. It's not force. But precise alignment. The key does not break the lock. The key matches the lock. Like knowledge matches a mind. Like initiation matches a candidate. This is alignment. It's not force. And we come to a threshold. A threshold is a liminal space, from the Latin word limen, meaning threshold again. An inside and an outside, the profane and the sacred, ignorance and light being bound or being loosed. A key operates at the threshold, not on either side. It has no existence on either side. The initiate is the key, standing at the threshold between what was and what he will be. And that is liminality. Liminality, sorry. To bind and loose. Matthew chapter 16, verse 19. I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Binding and loosing was also used as rabbinic authority, the ability to constrain or free. For example, something close to us, a Masonic obligation is a binding force, no doubt. Knowledge is a loosening force. The key is authority, not power. The authority to bind, i.e. protect what is sacred, to loose. And very importantly here, that means to permit what is ready. It has to be ready. If we go back to the Egyptian wisdom tradition, the key animated. The opening of the mouth, the mummy received breath, it came back to life. The statue received speech, it spoke. The dead received life. The key here is not mechanical, the key is vocal, the key is breath, the key is word. Like the Masonic word, lost, recovered, and spoken. And that is nothing but life restored. Hence, the operations are complete. So let's summarize. We have 4 operations. 1, conceal and reveal. Knowledge transmitted. 2, the threshold, the liminal transformation. 3, to bind and loose, i.e. authority and permission. And 4, animate, the word, the breath, the life. The key is not an object. The key is operation. Like masonry, it is not what you have, it is what you do, what you have become. And now, let's enter Gateway 3, the application. And for this, I chose Gurdjieff. I thought it would be one of the easiest ways to explain it. And here we land on Gateway 3, the truth applied, the deeper arc, sleep, awakening, and being. Gurdjieff is a Greco-Armenian mystic, philosopher, and spiritual teacher. Quite contemporary, actually, and his work from 1866 to 1949 would be an interesting angle to convey this meaning. There are 3 stages. The first, sleep. Gurdjieff thought, in Europe from 1915 to 49, his teaching, mainly labeled as the 4th way, conveyed the following: that most men live in sleep, not physically asleep, but spiritually. They live with automated reactions, no absolute self-awareness. This is external discipline imposed where man is considered a machine. His first stage is to wake up. And here we go from sleeping to awakening. The second stage is the awakening. Gurdjieff called it self-remembering. Sufis call it presence, hudur. Christians call it watchfulness, nepsis. With internal development, knowledge unlocks and self-remembering begins. We work on oneself, not by accumulation, but by recognition. This is the second stage, from awakening to beginning. The third stage is called being. Gurdjieff said this is everything. Sufis say, die before you die. And it's also in one of the hadith, which is how do you call it hadith? It's the collected words or spoken words of the Prophet of Islam. And that was also recorded more or less word for word. The Christian mystics say that not I, but Christ in me. And that came from Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. This is not given, it is becoming, and the self transforms. Being is everything. Not knowledge of a thing, but being instead of knowing it, being it. The third stage, which we all strive in, is called the work. Across all traditions and across all languages, funny enough. This brings us to the great recognition, the realization. With time, a man realizes that there is no external key. There is no external method. There is no external teacher. Change is the key. And you and me are the work. Gurdjieff said, the way is in you. Sufis say, the treasure is within. This has been a universal mystical teaching across all traditions, which brings us to the lock and key. And here, the most important realization that has affected my life was that the lock and key are one. The seeker and the sought are one. The teacher and the thought are one. The work and the worker are one. When the threshold dissolves, the inside and the outside are one. Not two, but one. This is non-duality. All mystical traditions point to it. Hindus, Buddhists, Sufis, Christians, more or less, even for us in the Semitic world, the Abrahamic unity. And funny enough, this is all I would have liked to share with you. It was a pleasure, brethren, to be in your midst today. And if there are any questions, I would more than welcome them. But what I would welcome more is that we will turn on the lights a touch more, and if we could have a discussion together, not aimed at me, but aimed and discussed with brethren together so we can all learn. Thank you.
Would any brother have some questions? I guess not. There's nothing. Okay. There. Okay.
Go to your last slide and the one before.
Which one?
So the lock and key and the one before. Realization. So, realization meaning here is that you realize, first of all, I think it represents the individual journey of Freemasonry, right? Realization is that at some point in time the individual is going to realize that he is all over the place, you know, scattered, right?
Or anything.
Or
Yeah.
And the lock and key is the end result where the action opens up to again reunite everything together, bringing the individual to the, let's call
It's
it
hard to
complete,
explain, yeah.
or finish, semi-finish, whatever, but towards the completeness after reflection, after. Do I understand?
No, absolutely. And here, but the word realization specifically here, you're absolutely correct, and thank you so much for that, was the realization of realizing you need to work with a lock and key. It's there's no other way. But once you turn the key, there is no lock and there is no key. It's gone. It becomes one. One opens the other. And one of the reason I chose this topic in the first place is because it honestly has helped me understand a lot of esoteric texts. The fact, like when I read a book, I read a book with the first 3 times actually. I read any text 3 times. First time, I read it with the intention of the author. The second time, I read it with what I read it again, but with my understanding or I put a little bit of myself into the text. Now the third time is very, very important because the third time I don't even touch the book. I read the third book that doesn't even exist. It's the synthesis of both. And I'll sit there going through it. It's a completely new book. In fact, it sometimes contradicts either me or the author in the first place. But it's a pleasure and a treasure to do so. And in my opinion, that is what the key is. I mean, we are the key. We have to match the vibration of what we are trying to understand. And there's no other way. I mean, there's a very big difference between knowing a thing and knowing of a thing. And a lot of us, not us, I mean, as human beings, we teach, we force our opinions, we live according to things that we know of, but we don't know it. We know of it. If I could have explained that properly. So that's why keys are important. In the traditions I come from, without understanding this dynamic, there's no hope to understand anything that was given from those before us. I mean, there's hope to understand your own life, of course. There's hope to understand things in any form. But what was given from the ones before us had a certain frequency, had a certain code. But to look for an external code, it was written for themselves. And if you cannot be them, you will never read it. You won't get it. That's what we understood, of course. Again, the point is it's open for discussion.
Very wise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, brother. I will not read it anymore. But,
No, yeah, I know. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And this is your power pin.
I was waiting for this one. That's the power pin, right?
So,
Yeah. Picture? Oh, would you like a picture?
yes.
We will.
Okay. Brother, it's the end of the presentation today, and thank you very much for coming. Grazie, molto mes. Grazie hapna. Salamat to the Filipino brethren. And we have some refreshments downstairs. If you can stay for the Romanian brethren who needs to go, you can have a quick bite, talk to the brethren who are here and have a little bit of reflection. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you.